There we go.
Do your voice exercises.
Me.
Welcome over 50, starting over, everybody. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
Here we are, Friday. What is it? Mid-January. 22nd.
Mid-January. It's almost the end. We're almost at the end.
I have
the
a
first month.
Birthday coming up in 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
As Lisa keeps reminding me, double nickels. That's what she keeps saying.
That's a big one. That's kind of a big one, yeah.
Yeah. Birthdays never mean much to me. In fact, I normally don't remember that it's my birthday until my mom calls me or something like that. I'm like, it just never been a big thing in our family, but some families, they're huge. What about yours?
Yeah, I mean, we always celebrate. I mean, Anne Marie makes a pretty big deal out of birthdays, which is pretty cool. You know, we get all the decorations out and everything, and it's just pretty fun. The kids love it too. It's just cool, you know. So so that's nice. But do you find that you forget, like, as a birthday is coming up, that you forget how old you are? No, that doesn't happen. Okay, it's only me. It's
for a minute. Like, it might take me a few seconds to think about it. When you think of your dreams, do you remember, like, about what age you are in your dreams? Because I'm always a lot younger in my dreams. Like,
really?
I remember not too long ago, a couple years ago, I remember I was like at a wrestling match as a spectator. I used to wrestle in high school. Yeah, and I had the opportunity to go in and wrestle for someone, and I'm like, oh, I could tear this up. And I went, at the time I was like 52, but I mean, in my mind, in my dream, I think it's because that's how I feel. Like, I feel really vital. And in my dream, I was like this ambiguous 25-year-old or something. It was totally ambiguous.
Yeah, I never really thought about that before, like how old I am in dreams. I just assume, I guess, that I'm the same age that I am. However, I got to say that when I say my age, I'm many times not just in my dreams, but in real life, I'm surprised.
Yeah, me too.
I'm that old.
I think most of us are.
I think just like we've said many times on the show, it's like my dad would say, oh, it's like yesterday that I was your age. Oh yeah, right. But it does seem like that, right? I feel like I'm about 25.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Now, when you said a couple of weeks ago, you told me that Brandon was 29, I think. 29.
Yeah,
he's gonna be 30. Dude, I felt like I was 30 a couple years ago.
Oh, I know. You see, this is it. This is the discussion you'll have with him. Yeah. And he's so nice, but inside he'll be like, right, old dude.
Exactly. I know, because we were there. I mean,
just a couple minutes ago.
Yes. Yeah. So it's pretty wild. So, hate to say it, but my Cleveland Browns lost.
It was disappointing, but it looked like it was a good game.
It was a great game. No regrets. My friends and I, in fact, I read the comment sections in the sports page. Man, everybody's just really supportive, thrilled, thankful.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, what we've accomplished. We got our head coach. Huge is that Baker Mayfield and friends will be going into their second season for the first time with the same system.
Wow.
So, Joe Thomas.
That's huge.
Joe Thomas, our Hall of Fame right guard, who's retired now, but he's always on the radio, like a sports commentator.
Oh,
now.
Right.
He said, he goes, because it was always like this for the last 20 years, as you know. He goes, so every other team, most other teams, our competition, were like going for their doctorate, their master's degree in their system, whereas every year we're going back to kindergarten.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to this.
Yeah, so
seemed like that's the theme for the Browns. I mean, throughout the Browns' history.
Yeah, so look how far they came and grew during the season. Now they have a whole off season to patch up some much needed holes. That defense, I cannot believe that they made it as far as they did with that defense.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, porous defense, but so we have this highfalutin offense that, thank God, can put up a lot of points, and still have to eke out those wins. But to come up with 12 wins on the season is amazing. I think that we just need some speed on this team, especially on defense. We got Lamar Jackson in our division for Baltimore, who's a very elusive quarterback that we just cannot run him down. We don't have the speed on defense. So need that badly. And it showed versus the Chiefs last week.
So who's in it still? I mean, obviously the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, Chiefs are going up against the Buffalo Bills, which is very exciting. The Bills have come a long ways. They were a bad team for a long time. So,
no kidding.
Yeah, they got Josh Rosen, who was my number one pick for quarterback the same year that we picked Mayfield. I don't watch a lot of college ball. I just liked him because he was a big guy, like a Ben Roethlisberger prototype.
Right.
So I like that. But no, I'm really happy with Baker Mayfield. He's a perfect fit for Cleveland. So that worked out great. I did want to mention, let's see, you said who else is in there? So Green Bay Packers, of course. They're on fire. Aaron Rodgers is having, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's having a career year. So
I'm in the news making some political comments this past week. Yeah.
What?
Oh, he's real mad about what's happening with he's not happy with Nancy Pelosi and the direction they're trying to take this. And he made some comments and made some big time headlines that he was commenting on this. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he was not happy. I think it was right after the interview between Nancy Pelosi. Hillary Clinton's got a podcast now and competing against us in our time slot. No, I'm just kidding. But she does have it's called
oh God, I got some names for it.
Yeah, it's called You and Me Together. And so
You and Me Against the World is what it should be called.
So she had Nancy Pelosi on Monday.
Really?
Can you imagine the two of them together?
Oh God, that's hell for me. That's hell for me. Well, when I die, I hope that I am not subjected to that podcast.
I think that would be hell.
Yeah.
It's like the Twilight Zone. You're trapped in a room with Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton. What will you do? Yeah. So they said some crazy stuff, and Aaron Rodgers jumped on that and it got in the news. And it just goes to show you that when you're in that position of quarterback, boy, you got to really, especially when you go into the playoffs, you don't want to add heat to what you're doing. And this certainly does. So, I mean, I think it adds another dimension to the pressure of these championship games that probably the team doesn't need.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to have to look that up. I scan the headlines every day. I have not seen that. I'll have to look that up. I can't wait to read about it.
It's funny. He probably said something under his breath. And
yeah, you're right. You're right.
We caught that on. We caught it on film. We caught it on
Yeah, pump that up, crop it out of there, crop it out of the context, and let's press that.
Right.
Wanted to mention our coach Kevin Stefanski was named Pro Football Writers American Coach of the Year. Schottenheimer was the last Browns head coach to win that. That was 1986.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And he won Sporting News Coach of the Year. The award is voted on by other coaches in the league.
Wow.
Paul Brown was the last Cleveland coach to win that in 1953.
Wow.
That's the kind of company he's in.
Geez, oh man. I mean, Marty Schottenheimer was a great coach. Those were great years. Yeah, they sure were. But then when you think about, gosh, that was 36 years ago. And again, this is when it just, boy, that sure does seem like yesterday.
Before Brandon's time.
Yeah, way before. Jeez,
all right.
Great.
So that's all I had for that. Hey, what I wanted to get at for our career self-improvement segment, I was talking about Chris Voss's gig, about the negotiations.
And I wanted to tell you, I downloaded it on Kindle and I downloaded it on Audible as well. And it's so cool. I'm really
so you have the written version and the audio.
Right. Now, here's what's really cool about that is when you have them both, you can sync it. And so I'm listening.
I never thought of that.
When I'm doing some kind of, I have to do like some email campaigns and things like that. And so this week I saw your email to me, and I've been playing Chris Voss while I'm doing kind of some things that I can do at the same time, but I'm listening to that. And then when I hear that sounded good, I'll pause it and my Kindle will open up to that particular place in the book where it stops, and I can highlight it right there.
Really?
Isn't that awesome?
That's way awesome. You know what I do? I pause it, open up my notes, and then type in a whole bunch of stuff in there. That's what I do at the gym.
Oh, hey, that's actually pretty cool. That's
well, it's a different day and age, you know. You know, we all, man, the competition just heats up more and more for all of us because so many people are doing this. I mean, I have earned a master's degree for sure in marketing over the last 6 years or so by listening to all these podcasts in all of my spare time. I could ingest 4 hours of podcasts in a day between all. When I am doing something idle, like working out, bike riding, shopping, whatever, I'm listening to podcasts while I do it.
Yeah.
So
I like to do that too.
For better or for worse, because we have sensory overload. I mentioned before that I felt like I got out of my meditation routine, which I had to force myself to get back into because I was listening to podcasts all the time when I'm running on the hamster wheel of choice or what have you, you know? So I've had to force myself just to get in 10 minutes of quiet time in my mind. And then back to my podcast, which I can't wait to get to. I mean, I freaking love podcasts. So, okay, back to Chris Voss. What I wanted to talk about today, just for a few minutes, is, you know, this stuff is all going to overlap and sync up like a puzzle. And so last week we talked about a little bit about the power of the word no. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We talked a little bit about active listening. Active listening is the number one skill that you need in negotiation. It's also the number one skill that you need to socialize. And active listening means that you are truly listening to what the other person has to say. Now, I'm going to back this up by saying that many years ago, this is something that actually changed my life. You know, I'm a natural introvert. And so being at the parties or whatever and talking to strangers was not always the easiest thing for me. And today it is very easy and very skilled at it because of one thing that I heard. This is not on Chris Voss's thing, but it backs it up. And that is, someone told me a long time ago, I was about 31, 32 years old. It doesn't matter what you say or do. It matters how you make someone feel. That's what someone remembers about you. They don't remember what you said or what you did. They remember how you made them feel. Now, how did that change my life? Instantly, a light bulb went off in my head. And what that did, it got me, when I'm talking one-on-one with a person, I stopped thinking about what the hell I was going to say next to try to impress them and myself. And I started listening to them because that's the most important, how I make them feel. If I make sure that they feel that I am listening to them, they think I'm the greatest person on the freaking planet.
Yes.
So how do you do that?
You know, that's so good. I remember my mom telling me that as I was growing up.
Well, I wish I would have known that as I was growing up.
She said that you could get into a conversation and just listen. And at the end of the conversation, you may have only said 2 words and they were going to say, that was the best conversation I've ever had in my life.
You know where it's to your biggest advantage? In your most important situations in your life, and that is an interview. So when you're all nervous having an interview for a position that you are very interested in, and they're asking you questions about yourself, ask them questions about procedures, what their role is. And when they're starting to feel passionate about something, ask them follow-up questions to that. By the end of the interview, if you've done only 25% of the talking, you are going to have a very successful interview. Those people are going to feel like you are very interested, very active, very aware, perceptive. They're going to have every positive thing about you going on.
It's kind of amazing. And as we talked about last week, this is the lost skill of listening. You know, I thought it was interesting. Just I want to stay on this for a second because
I got more to talk about from Chris Voss's point of view. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as I was reading this, he was talking about the fact that listening being the most important thing in negotiations. And here this guy's negotiating hostages and the release of hostages and everything. And he was talking about how they would have he would be doing the negotiating, but he'd have about 5 people on the phone with him to also listen. and that his students that he teaches regarding negotiations would question, why would you have to have 5 people to listen to one guy? And he was making the point that, hey, if the FBI needs 5 people to listen to a call, get a clue on this. Listening
it's hard
is
to hear
way
nuances.
more difficult than meets the eye. And one of the things that he pointed out was exactly what you just said. When you come into a room, most people, when they come into a negotiation, are consumed with the argument that they're going to present.
Yes.
And so while the other person is talking, they're thinking about what the argument is that they're going to present, and they're not listening to the other person, but vice versa. The other guy is doing the same thing. So rather than 2 people being in the room talking, it's like there's 4 people in there, and there's 2 invisible voices that are distracting everybody, and nobody's listening. And this goes back to everything in life. For me, it's sales. When we go into sales calls, we normally come in, we don't go alone, we go in as a team for this very reason, that everybody hears something different. Everybody's got a different point of view when they come in, and listening really takes a lot of clearing your mind so that you could just observe. But I thought that was great feedback.
I did too. Yeah. I remember that section you're talking about. What he did say is different people will pick up different things out of the same thing being said. And that's why they would have 4 or 5 people.
It's based on their experience and everything that they came in with. And the other thing was that he said that the people that struggled with this the most were the people that came into a situation with preconceived ideas and about how what the other person was feeling and everything like that, and they struggled. That's a big deal, is trying to put that away, your preconceived ideas, because we try to complete the picture automatically as human beings to make it line up with what our preconceived ideas are,
with our strategy.
Right. Exactly. So we're not listening once again.
And I'm glad that you said that, because where I was going with this is 2 different techniques that Chris trains corporations with to help with their active listening skills. One is mirroring, the other they call labeling. And so there is a YouTube video, and I have the link for this. I'll give it to you in the show notes. By the way, if you go to over50startingover.com and sign up for our email list, you will get all these notes into your email box as everything drops, along with the podcast. So you don't have to go searching for this. So there is a 1-hour podcast on YouTube, a video on YouTube of Chris Voss and his company taking a company through these 2 exercises on active listening, and they are practicing the skills of mirroring and labeling. And these are
cool.
Yeah, it's just follow-up, learning how to do appropriate follow-up questions so that you get to learn more, so that you get to practice active listening skills, but you get to learn more about your prospect. And remember last week, I used Chris's analogy of we're both sides are holding some cards that we don't see. Maybe there's a couple on the table, but there are cards that we don't see. Well, these are techniques where you're going to get to find out what 1 or 2 of those other cards are that your prospect is holding. So active listening, mirroring, a part of active listening. And both of these techniques, they help build you the all-important empathy. When you get to understand someone's passion behind things, now you are empathizing with them, and they will feel understood if you prove that you are listening and you build empathy with them. It is more important for a human being to feel listened to and understood than it is to be right and win. So with that, mirroring is to simply repeat the last few words of a sentence. So for instance, if in the example that I gave on this YouTube video of the one guy is asked, well, what is your biggest passion? What do you do, Peter? Whatever his name is. He goes, I love coaching basketball because it enables me the chance to provide a positive role model to those that don't have one. And so the other person who asked the question is told to use the mirror technique on that, which is to repeat the last few words of the sentence. And he says, those that don't have one, So again, this guy said, I love coaching basketball because it enables me the chance to provide a positive role model to those that don't have one. Those that don't have one? And he follows up with, yeah, I mean, I work in an underprivileged neighborhood where a lot of these kids grow up in single family households and go down the wrong track. The wrong track? And it goes on. That's mirroring. Mm-hmm. Just take the last few words and phrase it as a question or even a statement. It just shows, it proves that you listened because you're using their own words, but it's at the same time asking to expound upon that. So that's a good technique. The other one is mirroring. And that, I'm sorry, that's the one I just explained, mirroring. The other one's labeling. And that's putting recognition to what someone is saying. Start with the word it and not I. And now I'll explain that. It sounds like you're saying this, or it feels like you're saying that. So it is neutral. So what you don't want to say until you're further down the line and it's more hitting and engaging, you don't want to say, you seem like you want, it sounds like you're saying, don't say, it's upfront, it's too direct, it's too personal. So say things like, oh, it sounds like you need a little more time to speak to your partner or whatever about this. It feels like you're not understanding what I'm saying about this process. Is that correct? It feels like maybe you think that you're not getting enough service from us on a regular basis. These things are, it's called mirroring, and it's as a way to ask a question. You're asking them if you completely understand how they're feeling. Are you getting the right sense of empathy with them? So again, in this video, there are many examples. You see them go through the exercise of learning how to do this. If the art of listening is something that you struggle with, then I highly suggest that you look up this link and watch this video and practice this. This is something that you can practice. Mirroring and labeling is something you can practice with your partner, with your friends on a daily basis, and it will quickly become habit. And it's a great habit to have. If it's something, I'll tell you straight up, because for at least 20 years now, since I heard that expression, people don't remember what you did or what you said. They remember how you make them feel. That changed my life, I told you. And it took me out of my head and got me to start listening to people, took me, my introverted self, out of my own head and listening to the other person. So for me, when I was watching this and I'm like, okay, what is mirroring now? Okay, what is labeling now? I don't need to know that. I just know, ask follow-up questions to what you said. That's if you're good at that, you got it down.
You know, it seems to boil down. I'm still working through I'm still at the beginning of the book, so it sounds like you're a little bit further down.
About a third. I'm about a third.
I haven't read about the labeling yet. That's really cool. I can't wait to get to that part. But it seems to me that the theme here is that if you want to be influential, the key is actually a little counterintuitive. It's not how much you know and how much you're talking to people. It's really how much you're listening. If you want to influence people, you have to actually jump in the boat with them. You have to really listen and understand them and put yourself in their position. and Chris Voss, and I don't know if we repeated the name of the book or not, but it's Never Split the Difference.
Right.
Negotiating Like Your Life Depends on It by Chris Voss. He was a former FBI negotiator, top negotiator. But he's saying that, this if people feel that they're being listened to, it changes the whole dynamic and it opens up a door for you to be able to have influence in somebody's life. One thing that I was getting out of this and that he was saying is listening to people causes them to, when they know that they're being listened to, that they actually start to listen to themselves more. I thought that was pretty interesting, especially as we're dealing with the climate that we're in here in America.
It has everything to do with the climate we're in now.
Everybody's talking see, everyone's talking at each other,
and no one's
listening, right? And nobody cares about what the problem is. The person that's talking at other people, he's not being listened to, but he's not listening to anybody else either, and it's causing all kinds of conflict here. And what I'm seeing, and I've seen this week because it's so turbulent going on this week, is that when we just listen to the so-called opposing view, and that it calms down the situation. First of all, people they get out of their emotional, because there's the emotional and then there's the cerebral kind
defensive
of level. Right. So when you're in your emotional, you're all, then when you're listened to, they kind of move into that next phase where it's not so knee jerk, and they're thinking about what they're saying. And while they're being listened to and they're thinking about their reasoning that they're trying to put on you, they're starting to be more objective to their own ideas. And not only that, they'll become more open to any ideas that you might have. So again, back to that trap door, it keeps that trap door open. And I think that's a key skill in these days.
I think a simple way to put what you just said is you take them out of the defensive mode, which is an angry place to be, and they're switching over into an appreciative mode because you're listening to them. They're very appreciative. And now they don't want to offend you so much as they did before. When they were defensive and angry, they did want to offend you. Now you're having a give and take. Because they're more in an appreciation. You're both more of a love phase. Appreciation is love,
So I liked what he was saying regarding listening about when things are tense, what to do with your voice.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really
like 4 different techniques. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really big on nonverbals in communication. And, of course I studied communication in college, but it is very important how you say things. And he's talking about a negotiation. This is the cool part of the book, is that this is an FBI guy, and he's using all these hostage scenarios that he was in to explain
when the stakes could not be higher.
Yeah, if he fails, people die. Like these aren't normal negotiations. It's not like he's buying a car. People die if he fails. So you really have to win these negotiations. So he was talking about how, to calm somebody down that's highly emotional, you have to use your late night DJ voice. Yeah. And then he talks about how the inflection of your voice has to trail downwards, like I just did. And there's something about that where you can influence somebody's feeling by talking like that. And when you talk like that, it opens up the door wider for the other person to feel comfortable to share information that they wouldn't normally share.
They don't feel threatened anymore.
I was talking like that on purpose because that's how he talks when he does this, but it reminded me of a show that I love to watch, which was Frasier. And remember, Frasier Crane was a psychiatrist. Yeah. And when people would call into his show, he would say, "Hello, Barry, I'm listening." Do the exact same thing. And then people would share the deepest, darkest secrets of their heart with him, which would give him all the information that he needed, which is what he said in negotiation is more important to just discover, which then you can make decisions based on the information that you're getting. Don't make decisions before then. And that's what Frasier Crane was doing. He was listening, he was listening. And then with all the information he put together on that person, he could finally jump into their boat and be in their world and influence the situation. And this is all we have to do every day.
It's just funny that you use Frasier Crane as your example.
I know what you're going to say.
It's like, yeah, why don't you use Archie Bunker for race relations,
Jeez, Dan.
I love that show.
Archie.
I love that show.
And
Frasier and Niles always reminded me of you and Scott.
I know. As I was thinking about this yesterday, because of course I wanted to talk about the DJ and Frasier Crane. I was like,
okay.
Barry's always saying that Fraser and Niles remind him of me and Scott.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be insulted by that. I'm just going to take the good out of that.
How would you be insulted by that?
Those guys are a couple of wussies, man. I mean, come on. Well, I would have beat those guys up in high school.
Oh, well, if you take it like that, but they were smart and they were sophisticated.
That's true. When Scott comes over, I don't offer him a glass of sherry.
I know. But Scott is very fastidious. And I mean, he always has been. He's very particular. And so is Niles. And I've had this conversation with Scott before too. And he's always like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, you could see him you could picture Scott in the mirror with a little tweezers in his nose hairs or something, like seeing something that nobody else would see.
Yeah, that's true. You nailed them.
Right.
Funny. I know. I actually can see the comparison that you're making.
Okay.
I think
what are we talking about?
We were talking about Chris Voss, and I was just saying that empathizing is jumping in the boat with them, and the late night DJ voice.
Right.
Very how you speak to people in this day and age, especially.
Oh, yes. And that's the segue. I want to just remind everybody, I see the note that I had from last week about staying in the place of curiosity, because it's so strongly related, is that you always want to be in a place of curiosity. It takes you out of defensive mode, getting offended by anything and asking questions. And then you go right into your mirroring and labeling, and then you start learning more about the other person. And this is how you build rapport and empathy with people. And to segue into our more current event section, which is all you. I got nothing on it. I've been looking at the news all week, absolutely disgusted with all of it. And I don't even want to, you talk about what you want there, but it comes down to nobody is listening and everybody's yelling. And
yes, that is the truth.
Yeah. So what do you got under current? I think I do have something somewhere.
You do?
I do. And by the way, you don't know this, but I had to open up a separate notes thing because I could never find...
You're hiding your notes from me. I was like, what's Barry going to talk about? Wait a second. This is all from last week. What's going on here?
I got several things. But the reason is you have so much stuff in those notes, I couldn't find mine. So I meant to actually paste mine back in there for you, but it's so much. It's just too much double work. This is a note that I had from 2 weeks ago that we didn't get to. And this was Tulsi Gabbard, who I absolutely love and appreciate more and more every time I see her in the news. She slammed the woke use. Oh, man. The congressional language that sees prayers conclude with in Congress with an amen and a woman.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't have words for that, Merle. The stupidity of that, I don't have words for. And so they're also going down some list of all the different things that you can and can't say. And as I recall off the top of my head was you can't refer to mothers and grandmothers and sisters. And
correct.
Because this is acknowledging genders.
Yes.
Oh my God.
We've just entered bizarro world, Barry.
Oh my God. Now, how do you talk about anything? Oh my God, the freedom of speech is completely gone.
Well, let's go back to Amen and Awomen.
What the hell?
Now, as a non-Christian, I'm really curious about your statement about why that you didn't appreciate that and you thought it was dumb. But explain it to me. Why? Because I have my own opinion, but I'm more interested in what yours is.
Okay, right off the top. Okay, didn't do any research. Amen to me was always a closing and acknowledgement or a respect to God statement. Didn't have anything to do with men. And so to say a woman is just the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard in my entire life. To shoehorn that in, to find it's like, where did you find was going to say the R word that you're not allowed to use, but the really dumb person that actually came up with this, and everybody thought, okay, let's jump on that bandwagon.
I love it. I love it. Well, I, of course, it stuck out to me pretty big time, especially after we were hearing from the head of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the week before that if you're religious, you can't believe in science. You got to choose, so that was her thing is religious people here in Congress. They ask me all the time, I how can I believe in science? I believe in religion. And she's like, well, you can believe in both. And I'm like, what? Okay, sorry, let me calm down. What person in Congress is coming up to her and going, hey, Nancy, I believe in religion. I can't even imagine somebody coming up and having that conversation. But anyway, and then
she's got to go, man. She's got to go.
I know you follow it up with this stuff. And here's a minister. This is my problem is a minister saying this, amen and a woman. First off, you're right, Barry. Amen is an actual. It's a Latin word derived from the Hebrew amen, which means let it be. Let it be okay. So. I agree. These are two words are synonyms to this, and so you're right. It has nothing to do with gender. It's actually spelled AMEN. So really, if you're trying to be smart and say a woman to amen, really the context should be a women. So, I mean, they didn't even get that right. So,
oh, geez.
Amen and a woman? That doesn't sound...
now they're going to have to talk about, say, the 19th womanment. Because you can't say amendment, right?
Yeah, woman.
It's the same thing, man. It's the same thing.
Let's look at the second appersonment.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Exactly what's going on. Like, for instance, well, wait, I just have to say, in the last congressional where the Congress, when they started off, they outlawed several other words. One of them was it's a utility hole. It's not a manhole. Like these are the things. Well, how are these important? Yeah,
it's a trans hole. By the way, did you hear that?
Okay, moving along.
Did you hear that Biden just signed legislation that makes it legal for all transgenders across the board to compete with women, meaning biological males are not going to destroy women in sports just across the board?
Yes. I think it's a sad day for women. I think that's a terrible thing. I was thinking if my daughter were a world-class athlete and she has a shot at not only scholarships, but maybe fame and fortune, that now some young man who thinks that he's a woman who has clearly an advantage because he's got a man's body. I mean, whether he believes he's a man or a woman, that's beside the point. He's allowed to do that. But now he's got a superior advantage physically over this woman who might be my daughter. And I just think that for all the talk that we've had about the Me Too movement and Believe Women and women, this equality thing, that just really takes it to a new level of hypocrisy.
Hey, woman, brother.
This is that was so good. Oh man, but I mean, how can they look at themselves in the mirror and be for this?
What are the Olympics going to be like now? A bunch of okay, you just said, don't overlook what you just said, scholarships. Okay, these girls that are training and practicing their hearts out and excelling at sports and about to get a scholarship that just get beat out by some dude in a dress. Not cool. Now, what do we do?
How is this not discrimination? How do you not see this as discrimination? Is this girl could get a free ride to college, but now because there's a a person that has a man's body has beaten her and taken that away, how do you not see that as a civil rights violation?
Now, here's the other thing, though. I've thought a lot about this. And in fact, I've thought about this for decades. To me, all this goes back to, believe it or not, the Clinton era of the don't ask, don't tell in the military about, hey, it was the non-solution. So gays are kind of like allowed in the military as long as you don't act gay. Don't tell anybody, and you could go ahead and shower with the other dudes. All of that, all is cool as long as you keep it under wraps. It goes back all the way that far. My point is, so what's the solution here? Do you open up a separate trans category for sports?
Yeah, and the problem
and locker rooms
the problem is there's not enough people that fit into that category.
It's like 0.1% of the population.
To build an infrastructure around it, like for instance a trans football team or track team or something. Like there's just not enough people that fit into that category to compete. So this is going to be one that I don't think you can put your feet on both sides of the road at the same time on this. You got to pick one side or the other, because I mean, this is where we come to in our society that, everybody's got their own truth. Well, this is a problem with that, is that now we have a conflict because you can't have it. It's either black or white. You can't have it both ways. You can't have men and women on a track team running the 100-yard dash and have it fair for women. You got to split that up. You can't have it one way or the other. There is a truth here and one truth, and you can't have multiple truths. Otherwise, we're fooling ourselves. We're being hypocritical.
You're right. And let me take your line of thought a step further. That is, you can't have multiple truths and you can only have one truth. And to me it goes all the way back, like I said, to the whole Clinton don't ask, don't tell thing. What is that about? It's about sexual attraction. Let's forget about sports for a minute, but let's talk about locker rooms, the showers, all of that. Why do we have separate locker rooms? For one reason: sexual attraction, safety in that regard. But now gay people are allowed in your locker room. There already is a problem that we're not allowed to talk about, or else you're homophobe. But so they're allowed in a locker room where they're sexually attracted to people, whereas heterosexual men are not allowed into a locker room where they're sexually attracted to, say, women. So, and now that we have a growing number of so-called genders growing astronomically, the only rational answer to this is one locker room for everybody. That's what's fair to everybody. If you want one truth, and that is, because you're right, there is only one truth there, and that is, so if it's about sexual attraction, that's why you're keeping people separate. Well, right. Gay people are allowed in a men's locker room, and apparently these trans biological men that identify as women are allowed in women's locker rooms with little girls and stuff. And as a father, I would have a big problem with that.
Well, let's back up here. I think this, and I appreciate the line of reasoning that you're going down here, but for all of history, we've pretty much separated, men and women. Men over here for this, showers, bathrooms, or whatever. Why do we have to change what we've done for all of human history now? I mean, why? And I guess
fairness.
It boils down to this: is that, has the truth suddenly changed? And the answer is no.
Well, that's your opinion.
Still the same.
I think the truth has changed.
Well, hold on a second. Are men and women men and women?
I think that those lines are seriously rationally blurring.
Well, let me just say this. Has there always been homosexuality?
Yes.
Okay. And have men and women been separated, and men in bathrooms and women in bathrooms, where a man might be a homosexual in a man's bathroom?
Yeah, that's always been that way.
It's always been that way. So why do we have to change it?
Well, I just explained that because it's about fairness. It's about sexual attraction. I honestly believe the homosexual and maybe trans crowd, I'm no expert on this, but I think that's growing.
I understand what you're saying, fairness, but what I'm saying is you have fairness and then you have logistical reasoning here. if 1% of the population is gay, you're not going to.
Oh, dude, we were talking
1% and
1%. Dude,
okay,
way more gay, and it's growing. I think it's growing astronomically.
10%, is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I could Google it.
I think this. I don't think that it's really growing. I think it's always been that way. I don't think people are
I think it's growing.
Evolving homosexually. I think it's just become acceptable. And remember, being in the closet, coming out of the closet.
Oh, I know. So no, I think it's growing.
The thing is that I think that there was always a lot more gay people because they were afraid to say that they were gay.
I know.
So I think that's I don't think we're going to decide who's right and who's wrong on this, but it's
fun to talk about.
Maybe it's a combination of both.
It is a combination of both.
But I think once you make it cool, which society has done, that maybe
especially
more
the trans
would be attracted to it. Yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe more people are doing it because of the social mores around it have made it more of an attractive thing to do.
Oh, you get a claim victimhood,
And I think for some people it's a biological thing, and for other people it's a learned thing. And I think there's a combination of those things too. So
I do too.
But the bottom line is that for all of human history, we've had separated bathrooms and separated men and women, and there were homosexuals there that probably didn't say anything, but they were there, and we've been able to live through this. You don't really hear a lot about, at least in the men's room, where it's like there's a real problem where you're talking about, right? I mean, there's problems, but I don't think it's a huge problem.
The gym I used to work out at, I saw the shift over a 10-year period in a big way. You could feel it. Yeah. Big way.
I mean, for me, I live in California, and I go to the locker room and the gym, no problem.
Yeah.
I just don't see it, but whatever. I mean, that other people might be more sensitive to it than I am. And
hey,
I'll accept that.
Sure. We're not going to solve the world's problems there, but we threw a few things out there that we could revisit after more thought, sometime down the line. But you mentioned California, and I just heard, I think it was yesterday, it was going to the gym, and I like, just on that brief drive to the gym, I like sports talk radio, catch a little something while I can there. But swear to God, it's like 75% commercials. I go between the FM sports talk station and the AM sports talk. And so my last resort actually is NPR, so I find myself catching some NPR because of all the commercials all the time on my way to the gym. And they said, it's estimated that about 1/3, California I'm talking about now, 1/3 of the population in California is either had COVID or has COVID now.
That's what they say. I mean, here they were saying, that just a few weeks ago that 1 in 5 people in the LA area have it. So apparently it's more than that now.
Well, I'll say this, Merle. Here's the first thing I thought. Now, of course, it was supposed to be fear mongering. We're all supposed to wreck our cars as we hear this. I immediately thought, cool, man, you guys are so close to the herd immunity. You should have it in like a month or two.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said it that way, because there's really two different ways to look at it. And I think that your way is actually more the proper way of looking at it, because look, the fact is once you get it, it's just like getting the vaccination. You've now got the antibodies in your system. And for the most people that get it, they just get over it. I had a coworker got it just last week, and we do video conferences all the time. So we got to see the evolution. He was on all the calls and everything after that. We have like 3 team calls every week, and we saw him. That's the first couple of meetings we saw him. He was all sweaty and everything, all tired. And then, but now he's, after about a week, he's back to, he's not 100% normal and everything, but he's in his 40s. And, so I think for most people, that's their experience, and it is what it is, and that's what's going on here. But you could look at it as a good thing or a bad thing. It seems like the media is always looking at the dark side.
Always. But, and another positive is what I figured is the regular flu is super way down as a result of us wearing masks and taking all these
That's
precautions.
what everybody's saying, right?
Yeah, which I figured, of course. I mean, that's kind of common sense. I haven't had so much as a sniffle this winter, and I normally get at least 2 colds during the winter, but I'm reckless. I'm just out there with reckless abandon usually. So,
well, what I think is interesting, and I think the jury's still out on the masks. Obviously, you talked about one of the executive orders that Joe Biden signed the other day was the one that we were just talking about, but now we also have the mask mandate. And
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah.
No.
So Joe Biden, let me just list a few of these. So there's the 100-day mask mandate. He also reestablished connections with the World Health Organization and Dr. Tedros. Remember him, the genocidal maniac from Africa? And he actually remember we talked about that whole history that he had in Africa with his people in the one of those diseases out there. Anyway, this is a bad deal right there for us. I know a lot of people are excited about it. I'm not. Reestablishing tighter relationships with China. Also interesting with the whole Hunter Biden thing going on.
Yeah.
Men allowed in women's sports that we just talked about. He deleted the Keystone deal in Pennsylvania, which is really interesting on day one.
What is that?
Well, that was the pipeline coming from Canada, the oil pipeline. And remember in that last debate where Joe Biden was saying that he was going to eliminate fossil fuels, and then Donald Trump interrupted and said, "Did you hear that, Pennsylvania? Did you hear that, Texas? That's really important." And it's crazy that Pennsylvania went ahead and voted for Joe Biden because that's a huge energy state.
Mm-hmm.
And on day one, he eliminated 11,000 jobs.
Wow.
11,000 jobs. We also reestablished the Paris Accord. So the whole climate change thing, we're back in that. He's talking about amnesty for all the illegal alien here in the United States. They're saying 11 million people. It's way more than that, people. The other thing is that there's a huge horde of people that are coming up through the borders because of Joe Biden and his promises. They're on the way, so they're coming, and they're expecting money from Joe Biden. That's what they're saying. And also Joe Biden said that he wanted to turn the USA into California. And finally, a war on domestic terrorism and white supremacy, which is, really
non-existent. It's a fable
is here. Yeah. But going back to the mask mandate, so he signs the executive order for a mask mandate. Constitutionally, it's pretty tough for that to hold water. He can actually mandate that for federal establishments, which he has. So you get into like a national park or something, you're going to have to wear a mask all the time, which pretty much everyone's doing already.
Yeah.
At least out here, they're doing it.
Yeah. Same
but
here.
Joe Biden broke the rule immediately after he signed the executive order. He went to the Lincoln Memorial and he came there without his mask on, which is a federal property. Anyway,
that's Joe.
Well, good for the goose, not good for the gander.
He just forgot. He's so absent-minded,
We've got more troops in DC right now than at any time during the Civil War, where the Army of the Potomac was stationed. Remember, the enemy was just across the river on the other side in Virginia. And so they had to really pump up DC because obviously that's where the enemy would attack. Remember, this was the war where we lost more troops in the bloody battles than any of our wars previous to that or after that, including World War I and World War II combined. And we've got more troops there in DC now for this, for the inauguration, and still there days after the inauguration. It seems to me that what we're seeing today is an indication of how this is going to go for the next 4 years. At least when you see that kind of military buildup around the president and also around Congress, it reminds people of historic times, and it's not a good harbinger. Let's put it that way. I have found it very interesting these days watching the news and seeing where people of prominence are calling for Trump supporters to be deprogrammed, to be re-educated, that Trump supporters are in a cult. The other day I spoke about the Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi interview, where Nancy Pelosi was making the point that she believed that it was religious people that were willing to sell democracy down the river over their ideas and opinions around abortion. And that was the only reason that they voted for Trump, is because they didn't want abortion and they were willing to sell out democracy in the process. And so when you start to look at these kinds of statements here, it just seems like there's so much hate involved to go behind this. And this is an administration that's calling for peace and unity, which brings to mind 1984. We talked about the fact that they're the #1 book on Amazon right now, and there's something called Newspeak in that book, where the government, which is really a socialist government, a communist government, a tyrannical dictatorship, they call things the opposite of what it is. And so, for instance, the police department, where they would take people and torture people until they confessed to crimes that they didn't commit, was called the Ministry of Love. And we're seeing some stuff like this happening. So I just wanted to say, I've mentioned this before, Hillsdale College, this issue of Imprimis that just came out, you can get it at hillsdale.com. Larry Arnn is the author of this one, and the title is called Orwell's 1984 and Today. So he's making a comparison of what's happening in the book and what he's seeing in the news today. And it is an eye-opener. I highly recommend, you can read that for free, but it's really talking about the power that this government in 1984 had to change the past and relabel things that happened in the past in order to change how people think. And he's showing how that is actually happening today. I don't know. I mean, I can see that too. I can see it too. It's pretty interesting, all the things. But what do you think about the first few days of the Biden administration, Barry?
Oh, it doesn't bother me at all. Like I said, I do flyby over the headlines and stuff, and I'm so disgusted with the media that I can't get my feathers ruffled over Biden, who to me is relatively harmless. We'll make it through these 4 years fine. What I'm more thinking about, and you made me think about it just a minute ago with something you said, is about, well, the hate on both sides. It is both sides. When I think of Trump supporters, I definitely think of a lot of angry people there as well with hate, but more so on the left. But my point is, I really, really, really would like a third party to be a player in things today. And I've heard this talked about recently as, so everybody expects that the Trump following is going to be the third party, and the left is going, yeehaw, do it, because you're going to destroy the Republicans. And to me, that would be a nightmare, to have the Trump following be the third party. I want some moderates. I don't care. I'd be great with it if it would be the Libertarian Party. If we could get an infusion of moderates from the left and right into the Libertarian Party and grow that with some common sense and respect, I think that would be a great option for America moving forward. Moderates need a voice here. We're only hearing from extremists. And
no, I agree with what you're saying.
So I would really like a third party. That's where my head's at. As you asked me about the Biden administration, that's my answer to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's interesting. I would say that I think it's interesting what you're saying, and I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. A lot of people don't like Donald Trump, and that has been everything. It has to do with his personality. He's got a personality that's going to cause you to either really love him or really hate him. And unfortunately, he's got such a charisma that it becomes a blurred line between what people actually believe and why they voted for Donald Trump. And we know that about 75 million people voted for him this time around. But my premise is that I don't believe that most of those people were voting for Donald Trump because of his personality. I think that most people were voting for him because of the
opposition
positions that he has. And I'm just going to go to this, that I think that most people were voting for him because they were afraid to lose their constitutional government.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's where the party needs to go. I think there needs to be a party that is beholden to the original intent of the Constitution. I think that if Donald Trump were going to lead that party, that it would be unfortunate because it would be called the Trump Party. And then because of what they've done to Trump's name, demonizing him, then everything would be all about Trump and his personality. And that would be unfortunate. You know, I've talked about this fact that I'm an originalist, and I believe in the original intent of the Constitution. And I was involved in a conversation this week regarding that. And they were challenging me on this, and they were saying, well, okay, so you're an originalist. And this person was not. They believed in the progressive nature of the Constitution and the fact that it could change and evolve over time. And she was saying, how could the founders on the Second Amendment, you know, the right to bear arms, you know, there's no legitimate reason for somebody to have an assault weapon in their house. I mean, you don't need an assault weapon for home invasion. You don't need an assault weapon to hunt a deer. The founding fathers would have had no idea what kind of technology was available in this day. So we need to change that. And I thought, this is interesting. I was excited about the challenge because when you take a look, we've taken some time to go over the Declaration of Independence and also the Constitution. And I really love that we've spent time in doing this, because when you take a question like that, it's a legitimate question. Why do I need to have some type of an assault weapon for home invasion and for deer hunting? And the answer to that is you don't. You don't. And if that's what you think that the Second Amendment is all about, then you've got a very good point, until you start to unroll the context behind what the Second Amendment was all about and why it's in there and why it's important to our country.
Well, I'll say that my impression has always been that it's to protect ourselves against a tyrannical government.
That's excellent. I'm going to read you a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and it says this: "All honor to Jefferson, to the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by a single people, had the coolness, forecast, and capacity to introduce into a merely revolutionary document an abstract truth applicable to all men and all times, and so to embalm it there, that today and in all coming days it shall be a rebuke and a stumbling block to the very harbingers of reappearing tyranny and oppression." Abraham Lincoln, in other words, what he's saying is that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and in the Declaration of Independence, he put in there harbingers. A harbinger is a warning of something that could happen in the future. Harbingers, where if any generation, any country sees these things happening, and we went over several of them when we talked about the Declaration of Independence, that this is a harbinger or a predictor that a reappearing tyranny and oppression is coming. And so what I explained to this person is, if we take a look at the Declaration of Independence, it's got several grievances against King George. One of them was King George was quartering soldiers in the colonists' houses. Another one was that the soldiers were murdering the colonists. And another one was that King George was protecting the murderers so that they wouldn't have to be accountable for the murder. So they could just come in and murder you, and there was nothing you could do about it.
Wow.
That's in the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence was written, all the events leading up to the revolution happened, and this is a documentation. So what they're saying is, we are colonists. We have no protection. This ginormous army has come in. They're staying in our house. They've taken our property, and they're taking our lives, and there's nothing we can do about it. And so at the time, the musket was the pinnacle of technological advancement when it came to war tools, and it was very effective. And when the Declaration of Independence was written, many years later, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were written, and in it, the very second amendment is the right to bear arms for a militia and for yourself. The very point is that the founders wanted you, the people, to be able to protect themselves, like you said, against a tyrannical government, even if it was their own. And so it comes back to the point of the Declaration of Independence that your creator has given you unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you have the right to life and it's unalienable, it can't be taken away, then a tyrannical you have the right to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. And how could you do that if you have a pea shooter and they have a machine gun? There's no way. You lose automatically. And then in the Constitution, it says in the first line that it's there to protect the blessings of liberty and freedom. These are those unalienable rights. Blessings only come from God. If you don't understand that, then the right to bear a machine gun or a so-called assault weapon won't make any sense to you. But people need to the problem is nobody's talking to people in love about these concepts. The point of love is it's not so that you can shoot down a bunch of people. It's so that you can be protected and so that the government won't think about doing that.
Right. It's kind of like having nuclear weapons. You don't want to use those, but you want to make sure that you keep the peace with them.
Yes, it's called assured mutual destruction. You're not going to jump into a war with somebody that you know for sure you could destroy them, but that means you're going to be destroyed. So it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, to your point. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. And then we brought up the whole point about Venezuela and the fact that 20 years ago, it was Hugo Chavez, that disarmed the general public. It was one of the most prosperous, democratically run nations in the world at the time. We had a huge middle class there, and they had the right to bear arms. Hugo Chavez took that right away from them. And by the way, he was using Dominion voting machines at the time too. That's a whole nother side note. But anyway, after he dies, the people are disarmed. And today people are in the streets. They're eating trash in the streets. I've seen tanks running over the people. I have friends from Venezuela that had to flee for their lives that live here now. And they're seeing these harbingers happening here, and they're concerned. And so that's the whole point.
Oh, they're way more than concerned. They are very anti anything that smells like communism.
So here's what I got back is I feel sorry for you. You're living in fear, and I'm not going to live my life that way. And I'm like, okay, well, then this conversation's over. I'm not living in fear. Looking at harbingers is wisdom. It's not fear. It's what we do because history always repeats itself. Yeah. That's what Abraham Lincoln is talking about right here. And, it's not fearful to avoid things that you know will destroy you. It's wise.
Right. All right. We should begin wrapping this up. It's getting to be that point. And I wanted to just share with you a couple of positive stories. We have them on a regular basis, believe it or not, folks. And in this case, on January 21st, was that yesterday, I think? Anonymous donor pays off $95,000 worth of medical bills at Pratt Regional Medical Center in Pratt, Kansas. Yeah. UPS, United States Postal Service carrier Britt Aller said she noticed something different about the mail she was delivering on Tuesday. She kept seeing this red thing on the top of the letter saying that this is not a bill. Open immediately. And she thought, man, I hope some people read these things. And to her surprise, when she got home, she had one of those letters as well. So she looked through it and she said, she found out an anonymous donor. It said an anonymous donor has paid off your hospital bills. So Pratt Medical Center said that they were able to pay off bills to 430 families thanks to these donors that put together $95,000 in donations.
Wow.
So yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And especially in a country where our health care system is bleeding us dry of every spare dollar that we have. Don't get me started on that. And do you see, did you change to the other volunteers nearly removed 10,000?
Yes.
Okay, good. Volunteers is the second and last story. Volunteers removed nearly 10,000 pounds of trash from the Tennessee River. Now remember, I just got back from Nashville a couple months ago, fell in love with it. So this is so heartwarming to me, but also sickening at the same time.
10,000 pounds. Holy cow.
In just 3 days, they removed 9,200 pounds of trash from the river in Humphreys County, Tennessee.
Wow.
That is, I mean, thank God for these people, but it is freaking disgusting and terrible that they have that much trash in that river in the first place.
I mean, what do people think? Why? I can't even imagine like throwing trash into a river. Like,
it's how you're raised, man. It's all how you're raised.
You're right. I just how is that not common sense? I don't know.
But I think we just you and I just assumed right there that that was by individuals. Maybe this is by companies.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Or maybe it was. I saw those bags. Maybe it was the mafia, throwing
bunch of bodies.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. Yeah. Oh, hey, you know what? I never mentioned, we have been recording our after show wrap up for a couple months here, and I threw it on YouTube, but I've never mentioned it. I don't put it in any of the notes. Only if you're a YouTube subscriber would you know that it's there at all. And
right.
So I'm just this one time going to mention that. So that's
there's good stuff in there.
You know what? When I was showering before this, I was thinking about asking you, as it's still January, the beginning of 2021, maybe you could do us all of us listeners, a short prayer of prosperity and health and safety for 2021.
Oh, I would love to do that. So, Father God, I just thank you for all of the love and all of the blessings that you've given us. We appreciate that, Lord. And I just want to put out a prayer for everyone that's listening. First off, that this year of 2021 would be their best year so far, that prosperity would hunt you down and find you. And when I say prosperity, I don't mean just money. I mean joy and health and all of the things in life that make life worthwhile, that it would be life more abundantly, that you would realize this 2021, that families would come closer together, that friendships that are broken would be mended, that lost relatives would come back into the fold, that belief in miracles would be at an all-time high, and that we'd see them together, that this would be an unbelievable time, that any sickness, this COVID-19 thing would disappear, that our stores and our businesses would open right back up, that we could finally shake hands and hug one another again. Lord, thank you that you're blessing this nation of ours that we love, that you would bring true unity together and lasting love and harmony. In Jesus' name, amen.
And Awomen. I love it. Awesome prayer, man. Love that. Thank you very much. Hey, everybody. Thanks a bunch. Love you guys. Please share. See us at over50startingover.com. And hey, sign up on your podcast app of choice. Give us a 5-star rating. Love you, Merle. Talk to you next week, everybody. Bye.